Hello, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, bien, tú.
También, gracias por la entrevista, pero sí aquí ya más, con más tranquilidad y tiempo que otras veces.
¿Y dónde estás?
Ahora estoy justo en mi casa, que está en Querétaro.
Ah,
Eh, sí, este es pues el lugar donde también trabajo, ¿no? Es como mi casa taller, digamos.
sí,
Eh,
sí, como todos. Sí. ¿Y por cuánto tiempo estás en Querétaro?
Pues por el momento creo que voy a estar aquí indefinidamente, o sea, no tengo otra salida por el momento confirmada. Puede ser que a finales de julio, principios de agosto, se inaugura una exposición en la Ciudad de México y quizás vaya para allá a la inauguración, pero por el momento no me han dicho todavía bien, entonces pues indefinidamente. Ujú.
Sí. Ah. ¿Y podemos hablar en inglés también?
Yes, of course. Sí,
Ok.
voy a tratar de que se entienda, ¿no? I will try to
Ah,
solve.
está bien. Y tú no puedes explicar algo en inglés, tú puedes explicar en español. And
Okay,
I'll try to translate it with this brain I have.
cool. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, me too. I will do my best.
Está lloviendo ahorita muy fuerte afuera, so
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, here it's very hot actually. We have like a heat wave again. I don't know. But yeah, I know Mexico City is very rainy, right? Like almost all days is
well,
rain.
I lived in San Francisco two different times, and it's a very cold place. Es muy fría.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but me encanta, like lluvia y rain y poco oscuro.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, actually, I like that kind of weather too. It's very, I don't know, like it's more, it has more mystery to it, I guess. Like,
Uh,
but
well,
yeah,
in Mexico,
actually, I don't like hot.
well,
Okay.
in Mexico, it's not as easy to find a climate like this cool, moderate. So, and when people say that I'm here because I like the light in the city, they don't. They're like, well, it just must be really bright all the time and hot. And I'm like, no, we're so. Anyway, not that's not important.
Uh,
I and thank you for agreeing to speak with me today. Um, I am so I'm anxious to hear about your performance art and the foundations of it, and your I want to talk to you about the aesthetic of your work as well, and where that comes from. ¿Tú estudiaste en un colegio in Mexico or fuera de Mexico? Did you study in Mexico or outside?
yeah, I actually had all my education and artistic formation here in Querétaro.
Ah,
I went to an art school here. Now it's a university. It's called Universidad Autónoma de Querétaro, and actually I'm now there as a teacher. So I have like the whole circle, like being a student from to a PhD, also in the same school, and then to taking part as a teacher. I'm not teaching performance, but I'm teaching other kind of things that are related to the body and to performance art. For example, I have a performance and gender studies in of the class is one of the classes that I teach. So yes, all related. But yeah, my background, my scholar background was here in Querétaro. So yeah.
fantastic. And I would like to talk about gender in your work and your perspective on gender because there's a the aspects of the visual aspects of your work are very non-binary. Like it's not
Yes.
dominance of female or male. I'm curious about how gender plays a role in your work, specifically performance.
Yes, well, speaking a little bit about the foundations of my work too, I started to do performance art because one of the main themes for me that were very important at that time, like I don't know, like 10, 12 years ago, was the sexual dissidence or sexuality itself. So I started to do performance art because I was kind of interested and worried about how heterosexuality as a regime, as something that is um, like I don't know how to say it, obligatory, something that has to be or else, right? Like was one of the biggest problems that I identify on my own life, and all the other things and stuff that is connected to it. So since the beginning of my work, I have been working with this sexual aspect to it, and at the same time, gender, right, is like kind of new lecture about sexuality, right? Like we had this idea of sexuality that was kind of invented by the 19th century and exported to all parts of the world. That's like the idea, the main idea. So now I can understand gender obviously as a construct that is part of all these approaches in my work to the queer theory, right? Like understanding gender as a social construct, but at the same time, I guess what I aim in now it's not only to talk about the non-binary aspects of gender, but also to make a full like revision or a kind of trying to do a critique to gender itself, because the category of gender is something that was constructed and invented also in a historical period, right? Like here in Mexico, we had the colony in the 16th century, like siglo XVI. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but right, like 1521, like that dates. And in that point, before the colony and all of these different kind of ideas that came from the north and especially from Spain and Europe, we had here other kind of organization about sexuality. And even until today, we have kind of other understanding about that in some parts of Mexico. Like, for example, in Oaxaca, we have Istmo Tehuantepec and the Mushes, right? This kind of third gender that now some historians and I don't know, like the academy and from this perspective of gender called as a third gender, but actually the mushes and other many different terms and people and societies exist before the idea of gender as something binary, right? So in my work, I tried a lot to make visible this gender colony. And this idea of the gender colonism or gender colony is from Maria Lugones, another feminist in teacher, investigator, activist, a decolonial, anti-colonial feminist, that she dedicated part of her life to talk and investigate about this, like how gender binarism came here in Las Americas, in Latin America, or Abya Yala in this term, to become something that is like the exist, like the only way possible to live and to be is if you are a woman or man and you identify as if you identify as something on between, you don't exist. But the gender colonism of the critique about gender colonism is not only to try to see the people, artists, and societies that are in the middle of that two points of being a man or woman, but actually trying to deconstruct that idea of we have to have these two elements, right? Like being a non-binary artist in my work, some of my interests are to going forward that idea of the binary. And the problem with the non-binary is, from my point of view, is that we still talking about the something else, but doing the reference to the binary, right? So that's why the non-binary is like una negación, like a negative from the binary. So for me, in the art, at least as an imaginary practice and radical activism, if we can call it some way, I'm trying to imagine other terms and other kind of images and performances and stuff that goes far beyond that idea of the binary. So
how does that
yes.
how does that express itself? Because I understand like this ideal, it's like non-binary is using the binary in order to define itself. Mm-hmm. How did the non-gender orientation not being there before 1521 with the conquistadors? How did it express itself at that time, and does your work draw upon that? I know it's responding to this binary, but does it also respond to that historical long history before?
Yeah, I'm trying. Yes, it's actually kind of a new aspect to my work, because this is kind of it has been a long term evolution, I guess. Because in some point I define my work as queer art, right? Mm-hmm. Like this idea of queer with a Q, right? I can talk more about this in a moment, but in this new moment of my life, I'm trying to create art to link my practice with this long memory process that were before the colony, right? So yeah, I have some works that are driving or taking inspiration from there. For example, the one that is for example, that images with the cactus is actually that species of cactus is from that color, because it's called Opuntia gosselinosa. Is an endangered species cactus that only grows on the north of the country in an area that is called the silent zone, or la zona del silencio, in Sonora. And it's a rare kind of cactus that is purple or violet. So I take that. Well, actually, the one in the photo is not an original, right? Because it's on endangered species. This is a recreation. But I try to take inspiration from there as a kind of a survival plant, or being, like un ser vivo que sobrevivió like all this time, with this kind of color, and that still exists, right? So for me are like this kind of metaphors and ideas, like having my skin in the same color of the Opuntia gosselinosa is kind of this artist practice, or this kind of intents to connect my actual work with that past history, with the non-binary, right? But also I have other works that, for example, in the photos that are on the in the exhibition and on this publication, right? That is nightmare, wet nightmare, um, and and all of these imaginary constructs, as for example, when I show, well, this is the wet nightmare um, performance, right? Like I don't have the photos on my site of the ones that are on the on the on the magazine, but this series aim also to connect with the ancient past. So, for example, in that part of my web, I have a performance called Anal Revamp that is there, and I have for Anal Revamp, I have one moment in which I do a pulque inima. That the pulque is this sacred plant for all of the ancient social groups here in this territory, that they used to have this kind of rite or this kind of ritual enemas using different kind um, of um, of liquids and substances that are very connected to that idea of getting in touch with the divinity aspects of the plants. And so for me to recreate this pulque inima became something to try to link my art again with that ancient past. I guess in the more in the bottom of this page, I have some pictures of that part that is in this column. So in one side,
this will get us banned from YouTube right away. We'll be shut down from YouTube.
yeah, exactly. Like that's why I have only this kind of material on my site. But yeah, I use this pre-colonial imaginary system as a kind of archival and at the same time as form to as a form to get to connect with that part. Like we have such an anal taboo in Las Americas and here in Mexico. Like most of cisgender male are like totally against anything that has to do with their anuses, and so thinking about putting an enema in a stage and making part of the performance is actually very transgressive from that point of view. But if you add this part of the pre-colonial idea of the enema, where wasn't something to be ashamed of, what that actually was an art, a ritual practice, then you have like this component of anti-colonial view about the body and the practices, right? So yes, I'm trying to create new work that is also in this same path of the anti-colonial and critique from for all of this idea in the art world. So yeah, in some point I have this this idea, right? Like trying to break the system and point something that is that wasn't supposed to be there. Like I have a lot of I have been receiving a lot of hate from people that don't understand this kind of thing as an art form, and I think that part of it has to do with the colonization of their minds inside of a very restricted and very restricted idea of what art's supposed to be.
Right.
So that's part also of the anti-colonial struggle to show people that this is also something that has value and can be considered as art, right? So
people are, I mean, they're using these it's interesting to me because people become more aggressive and violent with artwork than they do in many other areas of society. Like there's this ideal that artwork is meant to express the full spectrum of things, but if you try to go to an uncomfortable part of the spectrum, then you'll be damned, So how do you respond to the critics of your work?
Well, most of the time I don't find actually an objective critic for my work. Most of the time I found kind of insults and other kind of commentaries of hate that are pure homophobia or LGBTQ phobia or other kind of hate discourse about what I'm doing. But what I found as a critique where maybe that the idea of the performance art hasn't like this that should be like people kind of understand art as something that has to be universal, right? Like you have to create this opus magna, this beautiful art piece that should be contemplated, that should be in the same way as Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, or I don't know, like all of these past artists that are very like sacred cows of the art history, and what everything needs to get into that same category and to be kind of measured with that idea.
Right. It's not a full conversation. It's everything is very limited to a very one mind about this is what art is, this is history, this is it.
Yes, and it's something very it's something that I found very violent because we have been erased from history, like a lot of different art practices from Las Americas or other places that are in like Occidental idea of art are understanding as something with less value. Like that's the difference between art and artesanía, that I don't know how to say it on English, but this is the difference, right? Like this fictional difference between something that we can call art and something that is more from the artisans, and they don't have the same value in the art market, or they won't be able to get into the museums or anything else. And at the same time, passes the same with the cabaret or other forms of art, like I don't know, the burlesque, or maybe performance art, or maybe I don't know, street art, that it just don't get into the main idea of art. And we have to change our work to be validated by that idea, by that idea of the universal aspect of art. And that is something that I found very violent and very colonial. So no, we need to change our work to get into that. What we need is the art history and the main idea of art to change and really became something that where everyone can take a part in the conversation. That's my idea, but yeah.
But a central issue of this is that the art world is centered around capitalism. And
yes, of course.
So value is assigned to work based on this set of standards. Mm-hmm. And basically, if you don't fit that set of standards, then you're left in a sort of a desert of not knowing how you're going to support the work, but also never fully realizing an audience, because the mainstream doesn't even shed light on these areas outside of Banksy and these art experiences, which have proliferated Mexico City in the last like 4 or 5 years, where you walk into these like fully LED screen experiences, but they're so two-dimensional. They have no spirit of the artwork, the original artwork, the spirit of the artist. There's no conversation being created by the work. It's just an aesthetic masturbation.
Yes. Yeah, it's very like that. I guess mm, we are kind of the crack of that system. That's why they don't shed light over us, because actually, yeah, the capitalism is all about just selling and creating an income. But at the same time, I prefer to be on this kind of the shadow space of the main artist scene than I prefer that than being someone like, I don't know, Jeff Koons, who can be a multimillionaire, I don't know, kind of artist, but that he is part of the problem, not the part of the solutions. For me, art has a very political side, and at the same time, I guess most of the people that don't understand this political intent or necessity of the artist is because they have such a privilege that they don't realize that they even have it. Like, yeah, we could still paint in back in the, I don't know, like few centuries ago, but at the same time, I guess at least for me, that kind of idea of art doesn't respond to the reality that I'm living, right? Like, that's why I create the work that I do. So, yeah, I don't know, it's a complex reality, because at the same time, most of the artists that are doing, I don't know, performance art or this kind of contemporary practices that are kind of decolonizing the idea of the main idea of art with capital letters, are in a very risky kind of way to live. Like, it's a lot of precarization. Like, they don't have the way to keep doing art and living about that. So it's also yeah, it's a lot of the struggle there also.
Yeah,
But
that is the issue is that you can have a voice. It could be as clear as day and as beautiful as whatever is defined as beautiful, but how do you sustain a practice and see it mature when there's no support? And I mean, with performance art, it's a little bit even more difficult because you have photo documentation and you create beautiful images that complement your performances as well. So you could sell those, but I mean, is
yeah,
there
exactly.
a market for that?
And yes, and then you have some artists critics saying like, oh, performance art has all the money and they have all the grants and they have all of these, but it's not true. And at the same time, I'm all about taking that opportunities, right? Because it's something called deuda histórica, like historical debt. For centuries, the money and the different like forces to create work has been only artwork has been only on the side of the mainstream. So if I can take a grant, if I can take something about that, if I can milk for a institution or something, I will do it because my work has the quality to be there. Because it's also this misunderstanding that performance art is like anything, like you can do whatever and it's a performance, but actually it takes a lot of work to do a performance that works. And at the same time, you have to create your own kind of universe and all of the different technical aspects attached to the performance artist practice. And then you start to do something that has quality. So of course it has quality, and of course it has value. So I will keep applying for grants and having that money because it has nothing to do with my political statement and my political practice, because it's actually something that I think most of the artists in Las Americas and in the south part of the world should be doing, like taking this away from the power and the dominant mainstream art. So, but yeah, it's kind of a Trojan horse.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. You have to be able to operate within the system as it exists, even if you're in contradiction to the system, because I mean, I haven't seen anything that is deconstructing the system overnight. And we always hear these things about, like, oh, NFTs are going to completely, destroy but it's just another expression of capitalism. It's all these different ways of people trying to create value in the art market that have nothing to do with the actual art itself. I mean, it doesn't even matter if the art is beautiful anymore.
Yes, it's very, very like that.
I have about 8 minutes left, because I just discovering our Zoom account for some reason is not connected to so we only get a 40-minute time period.
Maybe we can connect again if you want to.
I think that's what we'll do is I'll just reconnect us so that we can continue talking. I don't like cutting things off like that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very powerful thing to find a way to create art that doesn't fit within the mainstream and still exist within the mainstream. I mean, I believe this project is very much like that.
Yes,
me in my studio, because I'm not interested in creating I'm not interested in creating art that fits into the marketplace. I'm interested in creating my expression, and that doesn't have an economic benefit to me.
Yes.
My work goes in the streets, so everyone gets to enjoy it. So we all have these like different ideas about what it means to be an artist, but survival is the name of the game, because unless you're a trust fund child coming from a rich family, or have some sort of amazing backer, which I'm always waiting for, like that one rich guy who's just going to be like, oh no, just take these millions, I just like doing it. So it's important, and I believe that your work as an activist it flourishes even more by being a teacher, because not only do you have your ideals challenged by the students because you have to construct them in order to present them, but they're also there to show you new things.
Yes.
I'm curious about that idea of, like, you're, as a teacher and as an artist who's teaching, how the teaching affects your work.
Yes, actually have been a really interesting path, because when I started to do art, I didn't aim to become a teacher. It was something more like it just happened with the time. So they asked me to be a teacher in this specific areas, because they don't have other kind of the same perfil as me, like the same profile. So yeah, I accepted, and then I really kind of fell in love with the experience with the students. That is actually the most valuable thing about taking classes. I always like doing classes. I always told my students that I'm here also to learn a lot, right? It's not only to give them like the whole knowledge. I guess I believe that the knowledge it's something that it's constructed by two parts, not only one way, like it's a two-way. So yes, my work also has been kind of reflective, has been reflected itself, thinking about how to be able to communicate what I want to communicate, and how to do this transition between the heavy intellectual concepts and ideas to the performance art practice. And I guess teaching had helped me to understand better how to communicate that, right? Like that's the main thing that I found interesting in doing this labor as a teacher. But at the same time, I have been thinking a lot of how the same this institution, like the school and the academic institution, is still very like, yeah, they are kind of
They're part of the system.
they're part of the system, and they are trying to, like, yeah, they reproduce the things that they should be like changing. So it's very complicated, that part. I know that the real revolutions won't be from the academic world. That will happen on the streets, as have been always have been happening in the streets. So yeah, it's very interesting to kind of hijack or do also this labor of the Trojan horse between the academic world and the real world. So most of the times I'm trying to create in my students this idea of being to have this critic point of view, and don't take in everything as they told them to take. And it has been working. They have been very critic about things, about like this vision of gender, class, and race through art, and that's very interesting. Like questioning the art history, or the main artist, or the main the main arts. I don't know, like the main art scene. So
It's
yes,
synthesis, because they can carry that out into their into their world and evaluate things not only based on what people are telling them, but like on all the evidence that's around you. Because to create a performance art piece, it's not it's an interior thing, but it's also an expression outward that's happening in the moment. So there's a high level of risk. There's a risk of it not working, of it not communicating. I can do something in my studio until I'm satisfied, and then show it to people. Performance art comes with a larger amount of risk because it's happening live in the moment. And then afterwards, it can be judged by the quality of the documentation instead of the quality of the actual performance, because performance is gone. So can you talk about that in your work, and how you work around that for yourself, and what it does to your work or doesn't?
Yes. I believe performance art is very primordial kind of art. Like in the beginning, right? Like really, really in the beginning, the first manifestations of art were very similar to performance art, I guess. So we have these combinations of different kind of elements where the body and the presence of the artist is very important. I guess art is that. Even if you have a painting or a video or a sculpture or whatever, each people constructs this kind of relationship with the art, with the art piece, or the art is more as an experience. If you go to see, I don't know, La Mona Lisa, it won't be the same experience as if I go or something else goes. So I think from that point of view, most of the art is ephemeral because it's an experience, and you are just there as when you are experiencing it. But I know what you're referring to, right? Like in performance art, you don't have the control to make mistakes and then maybe taking up or change it, or it's already like how is being performed and that's it. So in that part, yeah, it's another kind of level of difficulty. So when people tell me, or I heard people say that performance art is very an easy way to do art, I guess, yeah, they are not actually known about what they're talking about, right? Like that you have so many different elements to being taken into account that is very complicated. It's like trying to plan, like planning a wedding. That it's a very important date and it won't be only one day, but you take a lot of time to plan that. And even in that moment that you don't have, even if you want to, you don't have the whole control about that moment. So something can go another way with the audience or with some tech issue or with your own materials or maybe with your own body. And you're taking all of that risk to do that. So yeah, risk is a very fundamental part of the performance art practice. And I think what we do as performance artists is to also work with that risk. If you have something that change in your performance, you need to incorporate that to the performance art piece. So it won't be understood as a mistake or something separated from the piece, but you can merge everything into the final experience of it. So,
and I'm curious about that idea, because I can imagine in painting, and the work that I do is very intuitive and it responds to what's actually happening in the moment. Not it's hard, but I'm thinking about that as a subject in school. Like that would be performance would be a very difficult thing to put onto a rubric, to attach value or no value to something, because something could be in process. It's a young voice,
Yes, I guess it's very challenging from the whole structure of the school and the idea of the academy to teach something that doesn't have the same linear process as learning to do something with some material or to being able to create a good anatomical work in, I don't know, drawing or painting but at the same time, I guess what performance art do is to transform things and also helps to transform these ancient ideas of teaching and how supposed to be art. It's not actually ancient, it's more modern ideas, right, of how to do art. So what performance brings to the table is the idea that are many different ways to do art, and we cannot all the time compare the different types of artworks and believe that it's something that is well done and something that is not well done, based only on that idea of modern art, that you have the way to compare artists and to say, oh, well, this is romanticism and maybe this is, I don't know, like Baroque, they have these elements. So that all of that process came after the artists were doing that. Like, it's more about the art history and the art critics and the art theorists that they talk about many years after the actually art practices. So I think performance art is very like that. You don't. If I was teaching performance art as only on the university, I wouldn't have the same evaluation system as other teachers, and I won't have the same pedagogical tools to do it. Actually, there is a very good book about performance art pedagogy that compiles a lot of different styles of create performance and teaching performance. I can send it to you. I don't remember exactly the way of the title, but it's a blue book, and it has like a lot of different tools of artists that have been uh, like kind of creating for sharing this kind of idea. I learned some of them from La Pocha Nostra, that is this performance art group that works in United States, but also in Mexico. And it's created from an artist that is called Guillermo Gomez Peña. And he is very into the Pocha methodology of teaching performance art. That is something that helped me in some way in that moment of my life when I take that workshop and other things with La Pocha. But you can create your own. I actually stopped. I stopped doing performance workshops in some moment of my life because I wanted to create my own system, and I was taking from here, from there, and now I guess that with all the years that have been through that time, maybe I can now put into works and into different kind of exercise and tools what I have been able to develop in performance art. But at the same time, I guess we need to have room for the artists and the young people to create their own, because that's actually what is important, not only to replicate what the masters say, because that was the history in from the Renaissance to the modernity. We have these kind of recipes that the masters, like I don't know, Caravaggio, I don't know, like Diego Velázquez, I don't know, they used to teach how they paint to a whole bunch of people that were into the school of that artist, and they replay it, and duplicate this kind of idea. When I think it's very much interesting if we left the students and anyone interested in art to create their own path. So that's something that is very punished in the academy, because they want to have the control. They want to legitimize which is art and what is value and what is not. And behind that is power and power positions that they want to keep having. Like most of the art critics go that way, like trying to legitimize what they say or do based on all of this, and they keep trying to keep safe this institution of art history or the academy or whatever. And I see it as the people that don't want to use inclusive language here in Mexico, for example, that they trying to defend this Real Academia de la Lengua, the Real Academy of Language from Spain, which is very colonial. Like the problem with colonialism is that it's very introjected into people. They don't even understand how deep it is. And when you start to do things that are not in the same way, they try to censor you. Exactly, no, like taking you down. I don't know. Like I don't see the necessity to get violent or insult or attack artists that are working in something kind of new and different.
Right.
Like art's supposed to be the safe space to do that, but
well,
it's
and
not.
The assumption that taste is equal, you know, that my should be everyone else's taste, and the reality of it is it's the diversity that adds the flavor to the things that you like, even if I don't like them. You know, I mean, it's you respond to the salsa. You don't
Exactly. Like
entirely different, like to shut it out or something. That was a very bad metaphor. I'm curious of how you view performance art in Mexico in comparison to what's happening in the north of here, and then in Europe, and how you see Mexico's voice and what's unique about Mexico.
Well, first of all, I have to say that I've been able to be more on the north, like Europe or United States, to present my work. And I'm very happy about that. I really glad of so many people that believe in myself and what I was doing, even when I was younger. And I'm very, very, I really appreciate that. But at the same time, there is a lot of people in the South that also appreciate my work and they wanted to have me there, but they don't have the money to do it. So that's the main reason that why I haven't been able to be in the South. I have been only on Colombia once, but I have been receiving a lot of invitations during all of these years. And also I didn't have the funds to pay myself a
Right.
travel for there. Exactly. So having said that, at the same time, I can notice a difference between the performance in other countries and Mexico, because I guess the thing with Mexico is that we have in our own reality, even with the colony, even with this modern Mexico, even with all of different kind of neoliberalism, kind of politics, and all of the things that happen in Mexico today, all the violence, the narco state, and everything. We still have this kind of surreal time, space that embodies and everything. You can see it a lot of in Mexico City. Like it's in all the country, but in Mexico City is like very intense. You can go to the downtown and the center of the city and see a lot of different scenes and images that kind of correspond to the performance art aesthetic and history. Actually, for example, I don't know, like Alejandro Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain were filmed here in Mexico, and a lot of different, very lucid, kind of daydreaming, nightmarish imagery was actually from Mexico, like already was done. Like
Right.
Jodorowsky just found it, like he don't invent it, like he just saw it on the streets. And I guess it's something that we have in like in the this kind of the historical DNA in Mexico, that we kind of uh, all the time are in that spaces, in that between spaces, like from between life and death, joy and sadness. I don't know, like we have a lot of we have a long history with this kind of contrast, and that's why people maybe can I don't know, like have this ability to enter in this kind of magical, surrealistic state very easy. Um,
Well,
so
surrealism is I feel like surrealism is the most central element of Mexican
it,
culture,
it
Mexico
is,
experience. For me, coming from the United States, where everything is beige and new and you know, whatever that is,
mhm,
where everything is a contrast. It's like, oh, I really hate this system of where in order to receive justice I have to bribe the police, but I also am able to go into the streets and create murals of art, you know, without interruption by the police or needing all these documents and, you know, blah 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 or whatever. So to me there's like this contrast of like opportunity and what are the costs of it in comparison to being in a bubble. And Mexico is this like interesting contradiction of the modern and the ancient. And
mhm.
get off of a metro stop, and there's a, you know, temple, you know, a temple.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Like the layers of the city and the kinds of things that haven't even been discovered. I often say that this gallery was built on an Indian burial ground, and people,
Mhm.
oh, that sounds very aggressive. And I'm like, no, I mean, it's probably quite likely, you know, that there are
Yeah,
layers of ancient life below us here at all times, and that's good and bad. I think it's a very creative place. Like there's nothing like it I've ever experienced in my life. I mean, I there's like a pulse of energy, which I think is also a little bit terrifying um,
yes.
as well. But I like that, you know, it's that ideal of like you're living on the edge, you know, at any moment the volcano could go off, the ground could open up, like there's all these like elements of danger. And then when you see performance art in the street, or you see art in the streets in Mexico City, I find it equally as valuable as the moderno. Like it's just very, it makes me feel a sense of responsibility to creativity.
Okay, yeah.
To see it all and to experience it and not try to place that value on it that you're talking about. What was it like to have your work put into the Moderno Arte Moderno?
Yeah, it was a whole experience. On one hand, I'm very glad, I'm very thankful for the invitation. I guess what is happening with these institutions, like never in my life I thought that I could be in the same exhibition as other big names from the art history, and not even in that place, right? Like maybe the Museum of Modern Art in Mexico is the second place more important in Mexico, in the whole country, for art, just besides the Palacio de Bellas Artes, the arts palace. I don't know how to translate it, but
Exactly.
So I never imagined that. Like really, it was like something that I wasn't aiming to, because I understand that my work came from something more underground and countercultural, and the possibilities to be there were like non-existent. Like, so I'm very grateful about the curatorial work and decisions to bring new and different and young artists with this kind of critic perspective about gender and sexuality from the dissidents, because I'm not the only one in that sphere. It's also Marco Yol, Fercho Escárcega, I don't know, like many people, Lucas Avendaño, Lea Garcia, that are from that kind of art. And at the same time, we are with these big names as, I don't know, Graciela Iturbide, Francisco Toledo, like, so for me, I was very happy about that, because I think it's kind of a achievement, right? But at the same time, in the other hand, we need to understand that something is behind this. I guess like it's not a coincidence that we are in 2023, well, in this year, in 2023, and we have these ideas and opportunities from queer artists from different parts of Mexico to be in the main and the center of the discourse. But obviously, it's behind the idea of the agenda of neoliberalism and inclusion and the LGBT thing. That also it has a bright side about the rights and the respect and the dignity that we should have as a collective and community. But at least in this moment is happening. And in the other hand, it's more about just keep all the people happy. Exactly. Just like a list that you can just check, and we have all the letters and we have all the different people from the LGBT, because it's supposed to be the right thing to do, because now it's political correct to do that. So I'm very worried about that, because they want, maybe I'm not saying that it's exactly the case with the Museum of Modern Art, but in a general picture, maybe they are just looking to have this idea of like, yeah, very like, yeah, we are diverse, we are very on this progressive side, but at the same time they don't actually work to do that. Like, I really want to see trans people or non-binary people or LGBTQ people to being represented and being part of that institutions, like they actually being hired and paid, for example, more than just seeing all the years in June the whole museum full of queer art, for example. So that kind of is just a small example about the situation. But what I'm seeing is, I don't know, we need to to keep fighting for our different causes. But yeah, I'm very happy to be there because it helps me to believe on myself and to keep doing more and to
resilient as well, because being associated also creates opportunities and gives, and the opportunity as an activist, as you very well know, is a responsibility. It's
yes, of course.
like, because you get that opportunity and there's 10,000 more people behind you who won't get that opportunity. So it is it's a responsibility, and it's an opportunity. I enjoyed the show. I was surprised by it because I hadn't seen anything curated that way in Mexico or in the United States, to be sure, because usually it's either historical
point of view or the new, or
sexual diversidad tends to be very historical, and then like here, our shows tend to be a blend of contemporary artists, different gender orientations, and wide range of ages within that. But still, it was surprising to me to see how they managed to include the history and create a sense of reverence for history, because so often, especially during Pride Month, everybody's so focused on the party aspect of it and forgetting that, well, in the United States, there are over 400 anti-LGBTQ legislations trying to go through right now, that they're deconstructing even more a woman's right to her own body and how it functions and keeps her safe. So there's all these examples within the queer spectrum, I believe, that we're under attack, and people are having a party and pasting a rainbow onto a building.
Yes.
I mean, it's such an elementary commercial response. Sometimes I just want to cut my veins open in the middle of the street and set myself on fire in the middle of a pride parade, but the party would just go on. I mean, nobody's going to stop partying for that. So how let's look into the future a little bit. What are you working on, and what do you want to be working on? Like, where do you want to take yourself?
Well, it's a complex question, because I've been also thinking a lot of what's the next step. Actually, not only thinking in my career, but as a whole, in general, like, we now have like the tools to say and to call the different kind of violence that is spread around the world. We can call it the critical theory, and the feminist theory and the queer theory help us to do that. And artists as myself, as many others, are also working into making visible that and pointing to where the problems are, but actually what we are doing to solve them or to create other options or other ways. So I'm very thinking about that. So I'm not sure which path I will choose, to keep doing what I'm doing or to change it in something else. I'm not sure, but I'm very into the idea of finding, like, going through all of these first step of name it and make it visible, to the part of the more kind of creating solutions or trying to create something that actually works for people, that is not only for the performance or the gallery or the museum, but more into a more complex and bigger spectrum of things. And so I'm thinking in that. I'm thinking more into how to create community artworks, how to create tools that will help other people. I'm not sure, but it's more or less the thing. And also, I'm very into these two new aspects. Well, it's not kind of new. They have been on my work like seeds for a lot of time, but I think that now that seeds are growing into something. First of all, is the idea of the intersection between horror and sexual dissidence, that I can call it like queer terror or something like that. Queer with C, that is this kind of way to say the word queer, but here we say it like queer with C-U-I-R, R, sorry. But this kind of queer horror, that is not something new, but in my work, a lot maybe is helping me to create something kind of very challenging and new. That is the idea of not being afraid to be a monster, like most of the idea with the LGBTQ and diversity discourse has to do with, hey, look at me, I'm not a monster, I'm a human being as you. But in my own very individual perspective, there is so much power into reclaim the idea of being a monster, because the monster represents this queer idea of life. It's all of the different fears from society, and at the same time is very associated with something that has to disappear, to be neglected, to be, I don't know. No. So I found it something that we can also use to change the narratives, because even if I'm a monster, I demand respect and way to live, and as the other people that are not monsters, right? Like I really interested into create something else there. So I'm very into that intersection. And the other thing is the anti-colonial and decolonial feminism and perspective in my own work, that I've been like I'm very into that. Like I think it's fundamental to have a anti-colonial perspective when we have all of this, because if you attack the colonial perspective, of if you take down or you rip apart the colonial idea, all the other things start to fall, like cis heteropatriarchy. It's on where it is, thanks to the colonial process in different parts of the world. So for me, it's like one of the Achilles heel for all of these different kind of violence that are kind of linked through the colonial process. So if you talk about anti-colonial studies or anti-colonial practices, you also has to you need to work also with anti-racial, anti-patriarchal, anti kind of violence in a whole. So I'm very in that part, and also very interested in creating new work, because all the time I'm working something new. But also, también I'm very happy to be able to bring or to open spaces for younger artists. So as a teacher or as a organizer of artist events or platforms, I'm trying to do that now, because I wish I will have someone to help me in that moment, right? Like, so yeah, I'm very working with queer youth. I guess we have different projects that we are working with them. So yes.
Well, that makes me very happy to hear that, and I share that with you as well. That's what this is about.
Yeah,
in perspective to an audience which is primarily would not have any exposure to these ideals necessarily. So where do we find, in the last remaining time we have again, find and how do we support these younger artists so that they can survive?
Well, I guess particularly with what we are doing is a project called Magia Prieta, that is kind of a creative agency. People can find it on Instagram. That's the only social media we have. And we have this event called Vestidas para Matar, that is translated as Dress to Kill, in kind of a way to showcase the different art of travestis and transformistas and drag queens, right? Like they are not so drag queen. It's more into this kind of aspect from Mexico that is called transformismo or travestismo. But we are working with them there. And also I have from the institutional side or the academic side, I have this art and gender coordination that is more, I don't know how to translate exactly. It's a coordinación de arte y género that is like kind of a department, like art and gender department in the university, where when I'm doing also different kind of events, a lot with students and young artists. Actually, you can find it also in Instagram as WAC Arte y Género. I will send it to you, but the WAC is Autonomous University of Querétaro and Art and Gender. But in a more general spectrum, I guess all the communities, like all the artist communities, start with the young artists. Like all the big names in the art world started as a young artist who needed support. And I think in the artist community, the ones that are more endangered are the LGBTQ artists, and they're also the los artistas racializados or racial profiling artists that also they don't have the same opportunities as the other ones. So I guess and doesn't matter where you live, you can support that part of the artist community and understand that maybe if you are paying for seeing Shakespeare, I don't know, number like billion of representation of Shakespeare, maybe you can go to some other,
every once in a while, sprinkle it in.
and you will do a lot of change for that people, because I guess it's very easy to stop doing it if you don't have this resilience. And the only way that I found that the resilience was because I had been able, and I'm very, very grateful to have a lot of people around me that support me through the years. Maybe not with money, but with the moral support that you really need to keep doing what you want to do. So yeah, I guess people also just showing up to that events, to that performance, to that concerts, I don't know, just to create that communities.
Right. It's a miracle what just your presence can do.
Yes, actually.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily require a purchase. Purchases are great, but we don't all have that ability to do that. But sometimes just actually being there, standing in the space and taking up space and putting yourself in proximity to the artist to let them know. I really appreciate your taking the time. I love your work. I've been stalking you for a couple of years, trying to figure out how it works. How do we get you into the gallery? So it was great to have you as a part of Tu eres el universal. And it was also, I love having your image on the cover. I know it's going to be somewhat controversial, maybe not the best commercial ideal, I guess. I don't know. I still think it's a beautiful image. I mean, it's disturbing. I like the ideal of this horror, because I find horror as a form of camp.
It is.
I wrote a paper on that in college. I love the idea of it because I think it's important to challenge people's visual idea of what beauty is, and to force people to look for beauty in different places. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about your work. And I told you we've had controversy with the owner of our building about the work that we show, and I made sure your work was the first thing that could be seen when you open up the doors. So there was absolutely there should be no like debate about whether or not you should be on the cover of the first issue of the Bureau of Queer Art. So I thank you, and please, we're going to keep in contact, and we're going to find some more opportunities, and let's coordinate some collaborations and see if we can use connections to support your work and the community and everything too. So I appreciate you so much.
Oh no, I'm very happy also, and also very grateful to have this conversation and to taking part of our gallery studios and these publications. So thank you so much for taking me into account, and of course we will keep doing more stuff. Thank you.